So today we're going to try to get as far through or as close to the end of the symposium as we can. We got a pretty good start on it already. Last class we ended with the speech of Aristophanes. Well, we barely got started on that, so that's where we'll pick up today. But for next class, if you haven't already, you need to finish reading what we're going to be reading from the Apology up to page 60. So you don't need to read any beyond that. You can skip Alcibiades' entrance. You don't have to read all that last part. If you want to, go ahead. It's only a few more pages. Might as well finish it. Get the grand finale. But we're not going to really focus on that. We're just going to go over what we're going to start today, which is Socrates' speech. And once that's over, we'll just sort of move on and try to wrap up our section on Plato as best we can. So again, next class, finish the symposium. So that'll be next week. And then I'm guessing a week from today, it might take us, well, it's definitely going to take us to today. We're going to get to the very beginning of Socrates' speech, and then we're going to finish it on Tuesday, and probably, start talking about Plato in general. Thursday of next week, we'll probably still have a little bit of loose ends to tie up, but we might be able to get to Descartes next week. So if you haven't already gotten this book, you need to get a copy of Descartes' Meditations, because like I'm saying, by the end of the week next week, we'll probably be getting at least a little bit into this, not much. Seems like there's something else I needed to tell you guys. Oh, of course, the first paper. So I'm going to try today or tomorrow maybe, sometime soon, I will post the topic for the symposium. And I haven't quite made my mind up about a due date for the paper. I'm thinking the 29th is sort of what I'm going off of, but I've been so busy those last couple of days, I haven't had a chance to sit down and look at the calendar and look at the syllabus and all that stuff. But if the date on the syllabus is later, then I'll just go with that. But as of right now, I'm thinking the 29th, which is not next week, but it's the week after. I think it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday or something. So there'll be a link on Blackboard where you'll turn that in. So again, look for those topics on Blackboard. Okay, we got a couple more people that have shown up since I last complained about that, but not much. Still only 14 students, so that's still kind of sad. I guess people want to take a long weekend or something. But in case I could possibly kill some more time, I guess I'll open the floor as I normally do to anybody who might have any questions, comments, concerns. All right, doesn't look like anybody has anything. So,
what type of format do you want your essays in, like MLA or like?
I'm sorry, it's hard to hear you. You're asking what format the essay should be in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really care about that. If you want to use MLA, Chicago, APA, it's just whatever, or ACA, whatever it is. It's just whatever you're comfortable with. I don't, and really, you shouldn't be needing to use that many quotes. If you want to use quotes, if you're just using quotes from our reading, as long as you just put the page number, should be fine. You don't need to worry about it works cited. If you're going to use some sources outside that weren't, like the Apology or Symposium, then yeah, you do need to works cited. But I don't really care whether you use MLA or whatever. Just, you pick a style and do that. It does have to be 12-point font, double spaced, roughly 2 or 3 pages. It can be a little bit longer, but not shorter than that. That's basically it. All right, any other questions, concerns? Looks like we got one more person that just popped up. Awesome. No, nothing? Okay, cool. So I'm just going to recap a little bit of what we did last time. I don't want to spend too much on it. I want to begin with Aristophanes' speech, but let's look at where we where we've gone so far, right? What's the story so far? Let me share I've got this slideshow here in PowerPoint. Let me share my screen. Actually, sorry, I got to stop sharing my screen because I just noticed somebody's in the waiting room. Okay, now let me go back to that. So remember, we started with Phaedrus, and he gives us the speech in praise of love, in praise of Eros. He basically, he says a lot of things, but his basic point is that love is a guide. It's a guide to moral action, right? It inspires us to be the best we can be. And, we kind of tore that apart. A lot of us, we discussed this already. There's a lot of problems with this. Does love always make us good? What about the Joker and Harley Quinn? Or what about Bonnie and Clyde? Or, so when we get to Pausanias, perhaps he's an improvement on this because he'll distinguish between the common love versus the heavenly love. And I think some of you used the word lust. At least one of you said that last time. Maybe it wasn't this class. But that's maybe a good way of understanding what he meant by common. It's a more physical love. You're just physically attracted, you're drawn towards them. Whereas the heavenly love, you care more about them as an individual. You like their character, their soul. It's a long-term thing, right? Whereas the common is like short-term. Just get as many as you can. It's all about this. It's all about sex and getting to the sexual act as quick as possible. And really the first two speeches here, Phaedrus and Pausanias, they seem to be speaking of Eros in the way that we commonly think of Eros, the way that we think of this romantic love between two people. But Eryximachus, remember, he's the physician, he broadens his scope, and he thinks that love is something that doesn't just occur in our souls, it doesn't just occur in the souls of human beings, but yet Eros is a force that is everywhere in the universe. And he explains that it's in medicine, it guides, because he's a doctor, so he starts with medicine. It guides the doctor, it guides the physician. The physician is guided by love. How does that work? Well, for him, love is a sort of, it seems like a reconciliation of opposites. So the doctor would try to reconcile all these opposing elements in your body, right? Hot and cold, dry and wet. If you're sick and unhealthy, you have this unhealthy love. That's what Pausanias might be referring to with the common. But that unhealthy love in the individual would be, having too much of one, right? But then if you balance these elements, hot, cold, or whatever, that's good, healthy love. And this applies to medicine. It applies to composing music. Musicians are guided by love when they're writing their chord progressions. There's again these opposing elements that come together to harmonize, and there's discord and resolution, etc. Love guides the seasons, right? The seasons of the year when things are decaying, in winter and fall, I suppose. That's when all these elements are out of order, and it's things are dying, but then things come back to life and are back in balance in the springtime, right? Love is what guides all of those changes of the seasons. And then he even mentions how love is what inspires us in our interactions with the gods. So it's another reconciliation of opposites. The gods are the immortals, and we are the mortals, and we have this relationship of love with the gods through our devotion to the gods, through our worship of the gods. So finally we get to Aristophanes, and we ended on him, but we didn't really spend much time discussing him. I think we kind of ran through it, sort of the basic introduction, what is his account, but I think I ended class without us really talking about it. So that's where I want to begin today. And, how would we describe, do you think, if you had to sum up the Aristophanes speech, what's a good way? Is there a good way to, you think, summarize? What's his point? For Aristophanes, what is love all about? Who remembers from the reading or from last class? Why do we fall in love with somebody according to Aristophanes' speech? Why is it that when we meet somebody, we just have this feeling of, we gravitate towards them, this feeling of attraction? what according to him is the explanation. He gives this sort of mythological explanation, but what's the gist of it? Was nobody here last time, or no one paying attention last time? Did y'all all leave early or something? Has it been that long of a week? Yeah, what's his account? Remember, he talks about how we once were molded together, right? All humans were double.
Oh, he was saying how love is a moral compass, and then what you were talking about, how
Well, that's
like everybody was
Phaedrus.
double. Oh yeah, that was Phaedrus. But he was
Yeah.
saying how everybody was double, and then I forgot who it was that he said came and like split everybody, so everybody was always looking for a soulmate.
Right. Okay. All right. So everyone's looking for their soulmate, and to be fair, I'm the one that introduced that term soulmate. You know, you might want to push back on that. Let's go back to the slideshow here. Right. So the idea is that where are we at? Sorry. You know, the idea is that love, it's a search for wholeness, for completeness, as you said, right? So I put like in parentheses there, soulmate theory. We'll come back to Agathon. We'll get to Agathon eventually. Just ignore that part about Agathon, right? But again, this myth is that we once were united, right? We were either double a man, double woman, or half man, half woman, right? We had two sets of arms, two sets of legs, two sets of genitalia, two heads, and then, you know, we were awesome. We would like cartwheel and spin all over the place, and eventually we got kind of full of ourselves, and we wanted to conquer Mount Olympus, where all the gods lived, and so we, you know, started rolling up the hill, I guess. And Zeus, the king up there, the king of the gods, looked down on us and was like, we got to get rid of these people. But everybody was like, well, we got to have people to worship us, right? We got to have somebody to worship us, so don't get rid of them. Just slice them in half, right? So when we fall in love, according to Aristophanes, that's why. It's because when we're born, we aren't as we originally were. We were originally united, and now we're separate from our other half. And so love is this search for wholeness. It's a search for completeness. And that's why when we meet somebody who we feel this attraction to, this gravitation towards, we don't quite know why. What is it about them that makes them so special? You know, I mean, yeah, sure, they're attractive, but so is she, right? I mean, she's pretty cute too. But why am I drawn towards her instead? You know, there's something about her. We just seem to fit, right? This is what he thinks love is. It's, you know, maybe you felt this yourself. Who knows? If you ever fell in love with somebody, maybe that might be, you know, sound familiar. But again, it's a search for completeness, for wholeness. And when you find that person, you know, you're one again. Let me find a good passage to start on here. This is again Aristophanes. So
he says almost exactly what you're saying on page 29.
yeah, that's, yeah. Well, I was gonna read on 28. I think he's, I mean, he repeats himself a lot. Just kind of rewords it. But he says this is that second like real short paragraph. When a person meets the half that is his very own, whatever his orientation, whether it's to young men or not, then something wonderful happens. The two are struck from their senses by love, by a sense of belonging to one another, and by desire. And they do not want to be separated from one another, not even for a moment. These people are the people who finish out their lives together and still cannot say what it is they want from one another. No one would think it is just the intimacy of sex, that mere sex is the reason each lover takes so great and deep a joy in being with the other. It's obvious that the soul of every lover longs for something else. His soul cannot say what it is, but like an oracle, it has a sense of what it wants. And like an oracle, it hides behind a riddle. And then he goes on, and I think this might be what you're talking about. Like it goes on for a while, you know, through to page 29. He's like talking about, you know, if Hephaestus, right? Hephaestus was one of the Greek Olympian gods who, he was the blacksmith. He made all the weapons, and he was the god of craftsmanship. he basically says, if Hephaestus offered to weld you together with this other person, that's what you would want. Okay. So again, I call this the soulmate theory of love, right? There's someone who's just perfect for you. They're the one for you, and you just got to look and, just wait, and you'll find them one day, right? And you're going to find that one special person. There's only one just for you. And when you find them, you'll be happy, and you're going to make each other complete, right? It sounds very romantic. Why don't I like this? Before I jump into my tirade about why I don't like this, maybe I should explain and open the floor for those of you who maybe have your own criticisms before I give you mine. But maybe it's just because I'm a bitter guy, or this bitter old man, and I'm biased or something. I don't know. I've seen couples who I think embody what he's talking about. I've seen couples in my life. And I remember when I worked in a grocery store at Whole Foods. There was a couple there, this little goth couple. They always wore black but they were so sweet. Like, they were the nicest, most friendly, and they seemed so happy together. Like, they seemed perfect for each other. Well, and they were together for I don't know how many years, but come to find out, like, they broke up after I stopped working there. They got a divorce, and I heard both sides of the story because they're both friends of mine. I didn't really keep in touch with them, but like she said he was abusive, and he said she was crazy, and on the outside it looked great. It looked awesome, So like, again, maybe it's my experience and my observations that make me kind of cynical about this. But I've heard stories about people who have lived together for 30, 40, 50 years. They lived their life together. They were, inseparable, and they loved each other. And, you hear stories about, somebody will die and their widow can't live much longer. Like the widow it's like a 50% or more chance that after someone who's been married that long, when their spouse dies, they're most likely to die within a year or something like that. So, I mean, I know that there's something to what he's maybe talking about here, but to me, it doesn't sound healthy. And sometimes it sounds like it's a facade. One more example before I shut up and see what you guys think. My buddy, her parents, I thought, were like this too. Her dad died recently, and we were talking, and I was talking about, he lived a long, happy marriage. He was married to your mom, that kind of thing. She's like, they weren't happy, man. My mom and him were like, they hated each other. They were just together because they were Catholic, and they didn't think it was that, like, they thought it was evil to get divorced, right? It was all for appearances, right? And I was like, what? I thought they were, they were happy. So again, maybe I've got a bias from my own experience, but to me, I feel like his speech it's fun with the whole myth, and it's romantic with this notion of the soulmate, but I've got some reservations about it. But I'll shut up. I just want to see if anybody else has anything they want to say in defense of him or against him before I jump into my tirade. What's wrong with the theory of a soulmate? What's wrong with the idea that there's this one person who's special just for you? Is anybody like they're on board with this and they think I'm crazy for, don't be shy?
I think you go through life and you can maybe feel it multiple times. Like, I've been in love maybe twice,
Right.
And both times I said, hey, maybe this is, my guy, maybe this is the one. And
Right.
neither of those times have it worked out. So it's just like, it's a both-sided thing. Like, yeah, it's great to be hopeful for that one person and to find your one true, better half, but you just never know in life. So
Right.
I don't know.
No, I think I like what you said, though. And to me, I think one thing he could have done to make me happy is that, because you said, hey, I've met a couple of people who I fell in love with, and I thought this might be the one. But he seems to present it like there's only one person on the entire planet. So one of those people might have been the one, and you missed them or something, or you got to wait for someone else. And I think you were kind of implying, it sounds, that no, like, you might have a certain type, you might have someone who's just right for you, but it's not just one. So like I would prefer, instead of having for him to have this soulmate theory, maybe soulmates, like plural. don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I want like 20 girlfriends, although that might be kind of fun. I'm just saying, like, if there's like 350 billion women in the world, right? What is like sorry, 350 billion, 350 million. I think, what is it? 7 billion humans on the planet, I think, or maybe 8 billion. I don't remember. It's a lot of people on the planet. Okay. If you cut that number in half, what, you got 3.5 billion people. You know, unless you're bisexual, I guess then you can count all of them. But that makes it even worse. That makes it even worse, because then it's like, out of 7 billion people, only one of them is the correct one for me. Like that's kind of depressing, I would think. It's like, what's the likelihood I'm going to meet that person, right?
And then what's his definition of like true love as far as soulmate? Because it's inevitable to not love someone when you've been around them for so long. You know, you love your mom, but what's that love, that soulmate love? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, he's also, his answer to that, I think, would be kind of what, you know, what I read from that passage, you could probably gather, is you just can't say, right? It's just something you just know, that you just feel. And I think I like that you said he doesn't really define what love is. That's probably, that's kind of a problem for most of these speeches. You're going to see when we get to Socrates, that's something that he kind of chastises everybody else for. He's like, you know, that's one thing, we didn't really properly speak of what love truly is. And so yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, it seems to me like, I have a lot of issues with this. One of them is sort of, I think you've already hit on, is that it gives you this idea that there's only one person for you, and that seems kind of limiting. I think that we still today, there are some people that still kind of think this way. You know, if I explain it to them like this, they might deny, oh, I don't think that. But I have friends, I know, I have, you know, I've had like lady friends who have these like lists of what their perfect boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, that's going to be, you know. And I think that this is kind of a similar idea. We have this ideal in our head of who's perfect for us. And usually it's kind of narcissistic. It's just like like if it's a guy that's looking for a girl, it's like a female version of him or something like that, right? So it's kind of narcissistic. So sometimes I think too, this is really common, I think, amongst my lady friends, unfortunately. The guys they look for they just resemble their favorite celebrity, you know? It's like whoever their favorite movie star or their favorite musician is. I remember I knew this girl in high school who she would only date guys who looked like Morrissey. You guys probably have no idea who Morrissey is, but he was a singer for this 80s kind of goth band, you know, and she would only date guys that, you know, that wore glasses and had his hair cut. And I mean, it was like, so she had this ideal in her mind, and she wouldn't, you know, meet anybody. So I think, you know, this soulmate theory stuff lends itself to that kind of psychology. And I don't think that's very useful or healthy. I mean, I think we all have our preferences. Like, you know, you got to admit, I mean, I have things I like, you know, things I prefer as far as looks or style or whatever. But, you know, I think that if you are too much like that, and a lot of times I think it's something that really doesn't matter that much. You think it does, but then you get in this relationship with somebody who might check all those boxes, right? You know, they're like, God, you know, this girl, I know this girl, she's this my friend Kim, she's like, let's just call her Kim, all right? It's not really her name, but she's real short. She's like 5 feet tall, and she'll only date guys that are 6 feet or taller. And I think just recently she's like, I guess I'll date a guy that's 5'10". I'm like, he's got to be a foot taller than you? Like, really? Like, okay. I don't know. Maybe that's important to her. But it seems to me like it seems kind of childish, you know. I'm like, for somebody that age, I think she should worry about things that are more important than how tall. I can understand you want someone taller than you. Maybe I can see that. But, like, I don't know. It seems to me like a lot of people have this vision of their perfect lover in their minds, and who's to say that what they would actually like, you know, when they got it in reality. And so, I don't know. As poetic and cute as this sounds, I think it leads to that kind of psychology. And so for me, I got my reservations against it. Another reason I'm not all for this, I don't know, anybody else has something to say before I jump in with my rant? No? Well, I was going to say, this sounds like he's advocating for codependency. Who knows, but what is codependency? I think, weren't there a couple psychology majors in here? Y'all talked about codependency?
Depend on other people, like it's both ways.
What's that?
So basically, you depend on this on one person, and it goes both ways. Codependency.
Right. You need each other. Like, you have to have each other. Right. Is that a good thing?
Well, it's based on the person. Like, if it's over codependency, like you're like super codependent on the other person, then that's not gonna work. But if it's like how do you say, like if it's just right, I guess. I mean, it can work.
I like what Joy put in the comments, pretty good. I don't know, maybe you got this from your psychology textbook or something, because it sounds really like pretty accurate, right? It's a good way to describe it. At least this is how it's understood in psychology, right? It's an unhealthy dependence on each other, unable to function correctly when withdrawn, right? So I think, it's negative. It's not good, at least when we talk about it in that technical. It's like, you might have a relationship that is cooperative, that you guys, you two are, what's a better word than cooperative? I don't know, maybe cooperative is the right word, but where you help each other out and that sort of thing, you complement one another. But that's different than being codependent. Balanced is probably a good word for it too. That's not the one I was thinking of, but that's good. If you're codependent, these are the kind of people who, like, they maybe people like this. Maybe you are one of these people. Sorry, don't mean to get personal if you are, but it's typically generally seen as not a good thing, right? If you're one of these people who always has to do everything with your boyfriend or girlfriend, I heard some student was talking the other day about, they know somebody who they have to talk on the phone every night, and they sleep on the phone with each other, like they fall asleep with their phones on. I'm like, how old are they? That sounds like some like middle school stuff. Do anybody know people like this? Maybe you've been that person. I don't know. To me, it's against the 12-year-old stuff. I agree. I think that's a little childish. Yeah, I was dating this girl once, and she wanted me to call her every night and talk to her on the phone for an hour if we weren't together that night. I'm like, I'm sorry. I've got things going on. Like, I don't mind texting you and like, hey, but like an hour-long conversation? Like, what are we gonna talk about? I just saw you yesterday. I don't get it. To me, and my last class, again, I'm not a psychology major. I took a few classes. I know a bit about it. But I think I had another psychology major in my 11 o'clock. She was saying there's a lot of reasons for this, right? There's not just one way to trace back codependency, but it's typically traced to something traumatic or something from childhood. Maybe someone has like abandonment issues. Maybe somebody just lacks self-esteem, right? They don't feel like they can stand on their own, so they need somebody else to kind of support them, that kind of thing. I have friends like this. It's kind of sad. Like, I love them, I respect them, they're friends, but I know people that, my buddy in let's just call him Larry, I'm changing the names to protect the innocent. My buddy Larry, who lives in Austin, I've never known him to be single, ever. Like, he'll be single, like he'll break up with a girl, and like less than a week later, he's in a new relationship. Now he's married, and they seem to have worked out. Like, they seem to be happy or whatever. But he always struck me as like this codependent type. He couldn't be alone. He just couldn't. Joy says unhealthy parenting and neglect. Yeah, those are the typical, right? Again, I'm not an expert on this, but those are the typical explanations for it. So I don't know, it seems to me like Aristophanes is advocating for what I would find is kind of an obsessive and an unhealthy approach to love and relationships. On the face of it, it sounds great and all, but I don't want to completely diss him though. I think there's something to this. I mean, I've felt it. I've, you know, I don't want to sound like some cranky old, bitter old dude, you know, with his heart broken. I know, you know, the feeling when you meet someone and you have those, you know, you can't really put words into it, but what might explain this feeling he's talking about? You know, you're just excited and you know, you're connected. It's not always codependency. How might a psychologist or a neuroscientist explain this? How might they explain these feelings of love? You never heard of like the honeymoon phase in a relationship? That like I don't know if that's the technical psychological term, but they say that there's a honeymoon phase when you start dating somebody. No one's familiar with that? What that means?
I'm sorry, I'm late. I'm just helping my sister.
That's fine. That's fine, Danielle. That's cool. Just listen in and pick it up as we go along.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody says rose-colored lenses. So someone's heard of honeymoon phase. Well, what is it? Again, you get in a relationship, the first few
It's
months. Go ahead.
It's like in a start of relationship, like you're in a phase wherein you like do everything for each other, like you're always together and stuff. You buy everything for each other, and then after that phase, you're like, it's like basically getting married. So after that, the honeymoon phase, like the honeymoon time where you give each other attention and everything, and after that, it just like goes away and you're tired of each other, kind of thing. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they've done studies on this. Okay, so again, I don't know if the technical term is honeymoon phase, but that's sort of what we commonly refer to it as. But they've done studies that when people start dating, they get a big spike in some chemicals in their brain, dopamine, oxytocin, like these things are spiked, and that gives you almost this euphoric feeling. So when you first meet a person, you do get this jittery, like you're really like you're drawn towards them, and from what I remember from the things I've read about this is that usually typically within the first 90 days, your mind adjusts, your body, your chemistry adjusts, and you no longer have that big spike of dopamine. So now some people can maintain this longer than others, right? But they say generally like the first 30 days of a relationship is like the honeymoon phase. Everyone sort of gets along. Yeah, as Joy puts it, it's a nice period where both are accommodating and open. Everyone's all open-minded. You know, they're very nice. You know, I mean, typical for me. I'm always like dating and everything's really nice, and then you know she's very like respectful of like my space, and oh, you want to go hang out with your friends? Cool, man. That's no big deal. You know, we'll catch up tomorrow. And then as soon as we're like, you know, more serious and we've been dating for a while, then it's like, why are you always hanging out with those guys? You know, why don't you hang out with me more? You know, and then there's some trouble, right? Then there's a little bit of I don't want to say animosity, but friction, I guess maybe is a better word. Good. So again, Aristophanes fun, but my least favorite, honestly, of the speeches, because I think that he's kind of a very romantic, idealistic notion of love that honestly could be good. It makes you hopeful, I suppose, but it could also like give you false hope. And I think, you know, for that reason,
Where are we?
We are finishing up the speech of Aristophanes. We're about to get started on the speech of Agathon. So around page 32. So let's look at Agathon. And in fact, let me get back to the slideshow here. All right, so you know, Aristophanes, as I said, he's kind of like this guy that's you know, the intense obsessive romantic, as you could say, this whole soulmate theory. Agathon, you know, I kind of have written down here my summary. So the way I sum up his speech is that love is a unifying force. It unifies us. I'm not really sure that I'm right about this, to be honest with you, because Agathon's speech, it's not as vague, it's not as hard to interpret as Eryximachus, but it seems to say a lot. There's a lot to it. It's almost like he just gives us a list of things about love that are good, and he doesn't really try to bring these all together until the end. And I think when he does that, it seems like one recurring theme is this idea of unity and the disappearance of division. Okay, so let's look at, again, this is on page 32. Let's look at the way he starts this speech. He says that this is the second paragraph, so I'm skipping the first, right? You know, he kind of says, look, you guys are going about the wrong way. We first have to praise love for what he is, and then for what he gives us. You know, all you guys have been talking about what the good things that love gives us, right? Phaedrus said love is a moral guide. It gives us guidance. Pausanias says heavenly love. Nobody really says it gives us anything. I think he's kind of defining it, so maybe this is not a fair accusation against him. But I guess Eryximachus, this is kind of true, that love, you know, guides all of nature, and it's reconciles opposites. That's why it's so great. Love makes us whole. That's Aristophanes. But I was like, you don't have to talk about what it does. That's the second part. First part, well, what is it? You know, what is love's nature? And so he gives this list of traits about love. So what is the first thing he says? He says that I maintain then that while all the gods are happy, love, if I may say so without giving offense, is the happiest of them all. For he is the most beautiful and the best. His great beauty lies in this. First, Phaedrus, he is the youngest of the gods. So what are some of the first things that Agathon says? Okay, first thing he says is that love is the happiest of the gods. So Eros is the happiest. He's also the most beautiful and the best, and he's the youngest. Why does Agathon say this, though? I mean, we'll go ahead and read the passage here in a second, but just to kind of see who's awake and who's paying attention and who's reading the book and getting this stuff. Or maybe even if you didn't, even if all that I just said about is not true, right? You didn't do the reading, you haven't been paying attention.
I'm reading along, but I'm also helping my sister with a classwork till my mama get back. She got
okay. All right. I don't need it. That's cool. I don't need to know about all your particular individual situations. That's okay. I don't need it. I'm just look, I'm speaking generally to the whole class. I'm not speaking to you personally. I'm speaking to everybody that's here. Okay.
Okay. I just want to let you know I am reading along though.
Okay. All right. Good. Great. I hope you all are. But yeah. So even if you aren't doing that, can you just guess why would someone say that love is beautiful and young, and young contradicts what Phaedrus said, that love is the oldest of the gods or one of them, and so does Pausanias. But he says no, he's the youngest, and he's beautiful. What kind of argument does Agathon make?
I think when you say love is young, like when they say young is beautiful and young is love, it's like because it's like as if you always fall in love when you're young, and like the first time you fall in love, everything seems all happy and good, but then as things start to get longer and older, it starts to, some people love begins to drift away.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. I don't think it's exactly what he says, but you're pretty close, and some of the stuff you said, I think, is what he's kind of saying. Yeah, so there are things about love that are similar to things about youth, right? Like you said, when you're young, you're naive, you're happy. Maybe when you get older, not so much. So yeah, I think that is part of it. But it's actually, I think it's even, that's actually a nicer way of putting what he said. I think he's actually a lot less politically correct. Okay, like why is love young and beautiful? What kind of things do we love? What things do we fall in love with? Do we fall in love with ugly things? Do we fall in love with things that we think are ugly?
No.
Yeah, we love beautiful things, okay? And he also thinks that we love young things. You know, as he puts it, He's the youngest of the gods. He proves my point by fleeing from old age and headlong flight, fast moving though it is. Love was born to hate old age and will come nowhere near it. Love always lives with young people and is one of them, right? So this is very kind of mean, right? Like, no one loves old people. This is really mean. This is one reason that I have problems with that interpretation I've been mentioning. I've mentioned it before, that some people think all these speeches get better. That's one way of reading this dialogue, that each one is an improvement on the previous one. This would be evidence against that. I don't think that when we get to Socrates and Plato that they're going to think that your physical appearance, whether you're pretty or not, has anything to do with whether you're beautiful or not. And so they have this notion of beauty that is beyond just the physical. So I don't think they would approve of what Agathon is implying here, right? That no one loves old. Old is something that's not beautiful, and love flees from it. What else does he say, though? He says that love is, let me go back to my slide there. He says, so love is happy. It's the most happy. It's beautiful, the best. It's the youngest. And then he says it's delicate. Why would he say it's delicate? They have similar reasoning, but why does he say it's delicate?
Because it's fragile. It can be broken and really easily.
That's a very good guess. But I don't think that's exactly his. Yeah, but that's kind of the logic he's using. He's like, well, there's these qualities about love that are delicate, and that's one that you mentioned. Yeah, the fact that it's, I guess, I don't know, someone might argue against you though. Someone might say, no, it's not. If you love someone, it's not delicate. It's strong. It's hard to break the bond of love, right? They might switch the metaphor, but I can see what you're saying could be true as well. But here's what he says. This is on page 33. He quotes Homer, right, the poet, and Homer's talking about mischief. But he says the same is true of love. So the god of mischief is also delicate. Homer says, hers are delicate feet. Not on the ground does she draw nigh. She walks instead upon the heads of men. And so that's the Homer quote. And he says, this is a lovely proof, I think, to show how delicate she is. So love is also like that. She doesn't walk on anything hard. She walks only on what is soft. We shall use the same proof about love to show that he is delicate. For he walks not on the earth, not even on people's skulls, which are not really soft at all, but in the softest of all things that are, there he walks. There he has a home. What's he talking about? Where does love reside? He says the reason it's delicate, it has to be soft, is because you only find it in places that are soft. Where do you find love? Where is it located? When you love somebody, where is the love at? When you love your mom, someone says the heart. So your this organ that pumps blood through your veins, it pumps love as well. It's like love like mixed with your blood or something, like your physical heart. The soul.
Like the soul. Like the soul is more is like within your mental mind, because your heart the soul is more like mental wise. Like mental, because your heart can't provide love for you. Your heart is just like you say, it's just veins.
Right. To be fair, Danielle, I think I'm being a bit mean to whoever it is that put that comment. I don't know their name because it just says iPhone. You should put your name so I can count you as here, if it's possible. They said the heart. They probably meant it figuratively, right? Like when you say like my heart is yours, you don't really mean that physical muscle, right? But I was just because I wanted to get you guys to say soul, because that's really it. Like you were saying, Danielle, it's more of a spiritual thing. It's a non-physical thing. I think that's the kind of love he's talking about, right? When you love someone, it's in your soul, right? He says that right here in the next line. He says, he makes his home in the characters in the souls of gods and men, and not even in a harsh character. He turns away from a harsh character, right? So not even every soul that comes along. When he encounters a soul that's harsh, he turns away. When he finds a soft and gentle character, he settles down in it. Always then, he is touching with his feet with the whole of himself, what is softest in the softest places. Therefore, he is most delicate. Okay, so let's look at our list again. Yeah, happiest, most beautiful and best, the youngest, the most delicate. He's fluid and supple. Okay, so why does he say that? He's fluid and supple, whatever that means. Y'all should look up that word if you don't know it. Supple. It's like, I guess that's like the opposite of stiff, or the opposite of flexible. Or sort of is flexible, right? It's the opposite. Like rigid would be the opposite. Why would he say that love is supple? Why would he say that it's fluid? He says that he's youngest and most delicate. In addition, he has a fluid, supple shape. For if he were hard, he would not be able to enfold a soul completely or escape notice when he first entered it or withdrew. So why? What is he saying here? Why is the soul, why does it have to be fluid and supple? He says it's able to enfold our soul, right? We're completely immersed in love, and it does this. How does he say it? He does this completely, and it enfolds our soul completely, and it escapes notice whenever it enters or escapes us. Whenever it enters or withdraws. So what's he saying there? What is it about love that makes it seem like it must be fluid or supple? Well, when you fall in love with somebody, do you notice yourself falling in love with them? Like, are you like, that person there that I met last week, I think I'm kind of like starting to become in love with them. I'm like 10% in love with them. And then like 2 weeks go by.
Yeah, that's like when you young, like he said, when you young, love is young, because when you in school, like elementary and stuff, you're like, oh, I'm in love with this boy, I love him so much and stuff, like kind of like a crush thing.
It's kind of a crush. Yeah, but when you have a crush, right, is it something that you just develop slowly, and you see it coming, like you see it approaching, you're like, next week I'm gonna have a crush on that person, and then like you're like, oh, about 5 minutes from now I'm gonna have a crush on that person. Oh, now I have a crush on him, now I like him, now I'm in love with them. Is that how it works, or what is it more like when you like someone?
No, it's usually uncontrollable. Like you tend to just like, you find their appearance attractive, but then like their personality and stuff like that, you just start to fall for them.
You just have it, right? Like it kind of sneaks up on you, is kind of his point. It just, all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I'm in love with this person. And you can fall out of love as well very quickly, I guess is his point, right? So it has to be fluid and supple. It has to be able to like sneak into your soul and sneak out of it very quickly, because you don't notice it coming and you don't notice it fading away. And it's just one moment it's there and one moment it isn't. No one wants to push back on this. I had a student last time that disagreed, that thought that no, like maybe kind of what Danielle was saying a minute ago. She was saying, oh, it's like when you're a kid, you have these like quick little crushes, but maybe that's an example. Maybe there are instances when love isn't so sneaky, when it does approach. And I mean, I don't know if I'm really that sympathetic with it, but I'm willing to listen to anybody who might. I can see how love fades slowly. Like you can kind of slowly, like maybe you're like in a relationship that's really working, and then like slowly through the years you drift further and further apart. But it seems to me like when you fall into love, it is kind of like an instantaneous thing. You don't really see it approaching. It might be like the night you met them, you're like infatuated with them. It might be after you've known them for a while, but you when you find out you're in love, you just find out. You're just like, oh geez, like I got feelings for this person, and it's just an instantaneous thing that I don't think you really notice. So I don't know. So it's fluid and it's supple. It's not hard and rigid. Okay, let's see what else he has to say. There a lot of stuff I'm skipping over here, but so he's the most beautiful. Oh, he's also the most virtuous. There's a long passage on that. He talks about how, love is moderate, love is temperate, love is brave, all the sort of cardinal Greek virtues. He's brave because even Ares, the god of war, the brave warrior god, succumbed to love because he loves Aphrodite. So even Eros has control over the god of war. So he's brave, he's just, all these things. Let's get back to the slide. I think that's pretty much it, right? Oh, he's also a good poet. I don't know if I agree with Agathon about this point, but why does he say that love is a great poet? This is on page 35. He says, the god is so, this is like 196E is the line number. He says that the god is so skilled a poet that he can make others into poets. Once love touches him, anyone becomes a poet, however uncultured he had been before. This we may fittingly observe testifies that love is a good poet, good in some at every kind of artistic production. So I think we've talked about this before already, but just to remind you, remember poetry, poesis in Greek, is a much broader concept than poetry as we understand it in English, right? Poetry is any form of artistic creation. So he's saying that anytime someone is in love, they always make beautiful art. They always make beautiful poetry. What do you think? Do you think that love always inspires good art, good music, good?
Well, that's subjective.
That's
it's like what is beauty to someone? Like, what's beauty to someone who's into gothic core?
Well, yeah, I think what you meant to say was subjective.
Yeah, subjective.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess I want to say I should preface this by saying it's my own taste, but I would say a lot of art that's like love songs is really cheesy. Like it's really bad art. Like I don't want to sound like some bitter old cynical old man who has no heart. I love, I like to love, but love songs are they're for girls, man. Like I don't know, they're just I've heard some great love songs, right? I mean, I put on some Marvin Gaye, he's got some good stuff, right? But most of it to me comes out like really corny, just really cheesy, So I think it, like you said, it's subjective. But to me, it's not necessarily the case that if you're in love with somebody, it's going to make you a great artist. In fact, it might make you, maybe there's some ladies in here or guys. I'd be surprised if there were guys in here, but maybe someone who's had someone write them a love poem and give them a poem. I'm just curious. Was it good? Right? Maybe not. Maybe it was pretty awful. Right? That usually never works, I don't think. But I told you that there's a paragraph here at the end of Agathon's speech where I guess he's talked about all these different qualities of love, and now he's going to talk about what's so great about love. And to me, I guess this is the unifying theme of his speech. And I guess unifying is a good word because it's all about togetherness, right? Love brings us together. Love, it ends all divisiveness. Okay, it makes us love our fellow man, this sort of thing. So this is on page 37, and it's at the top there, the first long paragraph. He sort of summarizes everything. He says, love fills us with togetherness and drains all of our divisiveness. Love calls gatherings like these together. In feast, in dances, and in ceremonies, he gives the lead. Love moves us to mildness, removes us from wildness. He is a giver of kindness, never of meanness. Gracious, kindly, let wise men see and gods admire. Treasure to lovers, envy to others. Father of elegance, luxury, delicacy, grace, yearning, desire. Love cares well for good men, cares not for bad ones. In pain, in fear, in desire or speech, love is our best guide and guard. That seems to echo back to Phaedrus with the love being a guide, right? Um, he is our comrade and our savior, ornament of all gods and men, most beautiful leader and the best. Every man should follow love, sing beautifully his hymns, and join with him in the song he sings, the song that charms the mind of God and man. And that's basically the end of the speech, right? And then he sort of gets into this back and forth with the rest of the guests, okay? So let's just really quickly recap all the speeches so far, because we're going to get to Socrates right now. And, he just like in typical Socrates fashion, he can't just give his speech. He has to chastise everybody for how they did theirs wrong and how it's supposed to be done and all this stuff, right? But let's, again, real quick, let's look at our chart here and kind of recap. Okay, so far we've had Phaedrus, beginning the ceremonies with this, this tale of, love as a guide to our moral actions. We saw the problems with that. Does it always guide our moral actions? Or does it always make us moral and do moral things? Or can love actually lead us astray sometimes? Well, Pausanias tries to fix that with this distinction between common and heavenly love. And one is a good one that guides us well, and one is more that's tied to the body and the flesh. And Anaximachus broadens the scope of our conversation here, and he says that love is a force that applies not just to human beings, but also to everything that is. Whether we're talking about medicine or music or the seasons of changing. And then finally we get to Aristophanes, where we started off today, the guy who thinks everybody's just looking for our soulmate. He kind of brings it back to a more, a human form of love, the one that we're more familiar with, the one that we probably think of when we think of the, this sort of eros, this Greek term, this concept of love. Now, Agathon, we just finished. He sees love as a unifying force. But what's the problem with all these speeches, right? Socrates kind of chastises. He acts all like confused, but I think he's being a bit ironic here. He's just being sarcastic. He says, I don't know what to say because I thought we were supposed to praise love, and I thought I knew and I thought I understood what that meant to praise love. But apparently I have no idea, because what y'all just did, that's not what I thought. So what is his criticism of their speeches? What fault does he find with their speeches? And I'll give you a hint. It's very similar to some of the criticisms that he makes against his accusers at his trial. So if you remember way back to the very first reading, the apology, the very opening lines in his defense, the first thing he says is, they talk this way, I talk this way, right? My accusers were very persuasive, but they convinced me. They said I'm guilty, even though I'm innocent. But they did it all wrong, right? You don't believe them, okay? So obviously he's friends with these guys, so they're not his accusers. But he says something kind of similar to them. He says, what was wrong with their speeches about love? What was it, that they did wrong?
Well, they didn't really say anything. They just kind of spoke their own opinions and their minds. And at the end of the day, there's no real proof towards anyone.
That would be definitely something he would get him for, but I think it's a little different than that, right? I mean, I think I think he does chastise them for maybe not explaining what love is. That comes a little bit later, but at this point, I think that you actually put it nicer. I think he's even being a little bit harsher to them. You said something like. I don't know how you put it, but that they're using their own opinion. They're just speaking they're not talking about what love truly is, but they're just sort of giving their own opinion. But he
They're
actually,
just proving their own points.
yeah, but I don't think that's what he says. He actually says something even worse. I think he says, and let me find the passage here where he pretends to be confused, where I don't think he really is confused. This is on page 38. He says, it's like 198D. He says, in my foolishness, I thought you should tell the truth about whatever you praise, and that this should be your basis, and that from this, the speaker should select the most beautiful truths and arrange them most suitably. So he thinks like that's what it means to praise something, is to speak truthfully about it, to pick out the most beautiful truths about it, and to arrange them in the proper order. But he said, I guess I was wrong. I guess I thought that's what praising was, but apparently I'm wrong. Apparently it's what y'all were doing. And what were they doing? They weren't doing that. What were they doing?
So wait, so he thinks that they're lying?
Yeah, he says he thinks they're lying. He says they're not speaking truthfully, that they're making up shit about love.
But then I kind of that would be kind of hypocritical of him, because like, okay, to me it sounds like they truly believe in the things that they're saying, or at least maybe it could come off like everyone has a delusion.
Yeah, to be fair,
that could be their delusion.
I shouldn't have said yes when you asked if are they lying. It depends on how you define lying. If in order to lie, you have to know that you're lying, then maybe they're not. Then maybe they're not lying. I think maybe he probably thinks they're just naive, right? That they, they don't know, right?
But it's kind of funny because he says that as if he knows what love is. Like,
he does. He thinks he does, but he thinks the only reason, and it sounds arrogant. But you'll see when we get to the next passage, he says the only reason he knows is because he learned it from someone else, and that he was in the same problem, that he was having the same problems that they were having, right? That he thought the same things about love. But Diatoma, this holy woman, this seer, priestess woman, who I guess has knowledge of divine truth, she set him straight. And now he's going to set them straight. So, I mean, yeah, I get it. He does sound pretty like arrogant here, but he's going to claim, and again, maybe lying is too strong of a word, but he says it appears that that's not what it means to praise something, right? I thought it was to speak truthfully and to speak about the beautiful truths about the thing, but apparently it's to apply to the object the grandest and most beautiful qualities, whether he actually has them or not. And if they're false, that is no objection. For the proposal, apparently, was that everyone here make the rest of us think he is praising love, not that he actually praises love. There's that distinction between appearance and reality. It looks like you're praising love, but you're praising something that isn't love. What you're talking about, you're not describing love. You're saying all this good stuff about it that sounds good, and it sounds beautiful, but on further examination, there's some holes in your account. It's not the truth.
So he's basically saying that we need to, like, I guess, compare and contrast all these different truths that we have and take the most rational of them out.
Yeah, I don't
declare
think. Yeah, go ahead.
And declare that as the truest truth.
I don't think he's come out and said that explicitly yet, but I think that's where he's going. I think that's where he's going with this, is that, yeah, we have to sort of kind of take stock of what we said so far, pull out anything that might really be true and kind of get a better picture, using, as you said, reason, rationality, and then organize it all in the right order, and then we'll have a clearer picture of what love really is. Yeah, that's where he's going with this, I would say. But yeah, he's being vague about it now. He's actually kind of being a jerk. You guys are dumb, you know. But at the same time, he's like, look, I was the same way, right? I was mistaken about love, and he starts questioning Agathon, and he starts saying, look, Agathon, I do agree with some of what you said. Okay? I'm not saying everything was wrong. Okay, you know, obviously, you know, one of the first things he admits is that love, you know, when you love something, you have a desire for that thing, right? You're drawn towards it. There's this sort of desire, right? So love is always a desire for a thing, right? For some person or you know whatever it is, you know, to be a good craftsman, you know, you have a love for your craft, whatever, right? But you have a desire for something. Now, he asked Agathon, would somebody desire something that they already possessed? So, for instance, if I really, like, would I say something like, I really want my apartment? Does that make sense to say that you want your apartment when you actually already have your apartment? Would you say you desire something if you already have it?
No.
I mean,
yeah, he
doesn't
doesn't
have it in a while.
What's that?
I was gonna say if you haven't like, I guess, experienced something in a while, like you're like, let's say you're a soldier out to war and you have children, you can desire to spend time with your children if you haven't seen them in a very long time.
Right. So he's going to clarify here, like in that situation, he'll say, well, if you're a soldier who's off in war, you desire to spend time with your children, your family, but you don't possess that time right now. You've spent time with them before. And he'll say even things like this, like, you know, you might say, maybe this is a better example. This is the one he gives. You might say, I desire to be strong. I desire to be healthy. And you might actually be strong. Like, let's say you're a power lifter and you know you can deadlift 700 pounds or 650 or whatever the world record is right now. Okay, like let's say that you're strong. He says if you're that power lifter and you say I desire to be strong, you might say that, but what you really mean is that you desire to maintain your strength, right? So if you say, I want to be healthy, and you already are healthy, what you really mean is that you desire to continue being healthy, right? You already have health, you already have strength. So what you really mean is you want to keep that. So if you say, I desire my lover, well, you already have your lover. What you mean is you want to maintain that love, that you want to keep that love, okay? So Agathon seems to agree with this. They all seem, yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah. So love is a desire, and you always desire something you don't possess. And so it's always desire for something that you lack. Now, you may have issues with that. I don't know. I mean, if you do, jump on in and tell me if you got a critique of that. But where does he go with this? He says that because of this, and they all agree, love is a desire. It's always a desire for something. And whatever that thing is, you can't desire it if you already have it. So love is a desire to possess. He says to possess beautiful things, okay? You always desire things that are beautiful. And the Greek word beautiful, it's more a general term than in English, right? It can kind of mean fine, fine or fair or elegant, beautiful, perfect.
It sounds like avarice.
Avarice? Really?
Like, cause like when you say it's a desire, I'm not saying like not in a negative. I mean, well, it could be.
I was gonna say, cause that's kind of a negative. I was saying the opposite of avarice. It's like you're drawn, like avarice. You're like drawn. You have an aversion. Like you're like, I don't like that person. They repel me. Whereas love's like.
I mean avarice is in like I mean in like greed.
Oh, greed. Oh yeah. Like yeah. Okay, like yeah, like you're okay. So yeah, you're just like, wow, avaricious. Oh, I just got to get this. Yeah, you want to possess that person, pretty much. Yeah.
because the moment you said not necessarily like the beautiful in Greek doesn't really necessarily mean what we think it means.
Yeah.
And then I was all like, that sounds like greed, because like anything could be like it sounds like you said it sounds more subjective, I guess.
Well, for him, we're gonna, and we'll talk a lot more about this next class because we're getting close to the end here, so I don't want to get too deep into this.
Oh, there it is.
Somebody needs to hit mute. Okay, I got him. Okay, yeah, but I think you're getting on the right track here. Because of what I said about, because what I said about beauty. It's going to be something super abstract and not super physical, right? So it sounds like, when you're saying, oh, it's greed and you want something, Socrates is going to correct us, right? That's a lower form of love, right? Attachment to physical or material possessions. It might fit this mold of desiring things that we see as beautiful, right? But for him, that is subjective. So your comment is still, your point still stands. But he says there's something beyond our subjective view of beauty. There's an actual thing that's just beautiful that doesn't depend on my opinion. And so that's what the philosopher is supposed to be able to get to. And that's what the true love is, for true beauty. And so I don't want to talk too much on this because that's going to be really the main focus of next class. But do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, that sounds like that thing I brought up before, where you have the atheists and the Christian who are having a conversation about what does actual love mean, and they like when you say something objective, it's like I think I said that human conscience can't really attain something that objective, because even if someone is selfless, if you commit an act that's selfless, you feel some kind of satisfaction that you did something good for someone. Thus, it's not really an objective love,
right? Well,
like,
for Plato, his response to that is that you'll be able to do it maybe, and this is one reading of it, but you're in a state right now where what you say is true. You're not going to be able to ever be completely objective, but what's really getting in the way of that is your physical form, right? So the fact that you have a body, your body's going to always have a certain way of seeing things, and it's going to have its own experiences and its own sort of tastes and its own preferences. But for him, if we're able to detach ourselves from that body and just focus on the intellect, we can get it. But he'll admit we can't really get that here in this life. So if we can't get it here in this life, then when can we get this subjectivity? Can we ever get it? Well, he thinks we can, maybe, but if we couldn't get it now. When would it happen?
I mean, probably not. I mean, like, because he wouldn't, like, nobody on this plane of existence would know how people are or how beings are when they leave this plane of existence. And if he's talking about physical bodies having limited our awareness or our focus, then I guess he's also applying that to the gods as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He seems to speak as little about the gods as he possibly can. So I don't know if we want to bring them into the mix here, but certainly I think he's assuming that there is a possibility that we can somehow escape our body. And
the only reason why I bring up the gods is because he brings up, he doesn't bring up Ares, but Ares and Aphrodite is brought up, and then you can bring up every woman that Zeus or Poseidon have messed with.
Right.
So it's like, it seems like as long as you're like in some physical form, that physical form like limits or focuses your awareness on these desires.
Right.
So yeah, so like when you said people die,
right,
and then they get that form, and that thing I was talking about before, like he said, like when a body is dead and no longer has that consciousness, it feeds the earth, or like how I brought up before, how a tree will always cast shade on whatever is under it, regardless of whether or not you try to chop it down or not.
Yeah. Well, he's gonna say, there's a lot there, so let me try to see if I can address all that. So he's gonna say, look, this physical form that you're in, yes, like you said, it's going to be limiting you, but there is a possibility that after you die, right, maybe, right, if you live the life of the philosopher and you sort of detached yourself from that physical body, right, then perhaps, right, you can be pure soul, right, and you can get out of this prison, and at that moment you can understand what true beauty is, what true love is. And the thing you said about the gods, I don't want to get too much on this because we'll get off topic, but it seems like Plato did not like the stories that were told about the gods. You mentioned how Zeus would come down and have relations, and he would take on a physical form. Plato thought that those could not be true, that behavior was beneath the behavior of a god, and so for him it seemed like the gods were if there were gods to Plato, that they were these moral exemplars, and that they had wisdom that we did not possess, and that the gods knew things about true love, and the gods knew things about true goodness and true beauty, and so that would lend them to not being physical, right? That they're a non-physical, they don't have a body, right? So I don't want to get too sidetracked in that. Let's try to we got to try to wrap it up because I know we're getting close to the end of class. But all the stuff that you're bringing up, by the way, don't worry. We're going to come back to it next time. It'll probably be the main focus, actually, is all these sort of metaphysical considerations. But where's he going with this argument? So he's saying that he's defined love in such a way that it's always going to be a desire. That's an element of it. It's desire. Desire always implies a lack. Okay, so you don't desire something if you already have it. So he says that if that's true, and they've all agreed to it at this point, he says, then what you said about love can't be true. You said that love is beautiful. Well, it can't be beautiful if what you said is true, because it desires beautiful things. Love is a desire for beautiful things. It's a desire for good things. Now, that might be subjective. We might be mistaken about what's beautiful and good, but we all desire what we think is beautiful and good. And so he says that's an element. So why would you desire beauty if you're already beautiful? So love can't be beautiful. Why would you desire good if you're already good? So love can't be good. Does that mean that love is ugly and that love is bad? What's the answer to that? Is love ugly then? So love's not beautiful. If he's right about that, does that mean that love is ugly?
It's neither.
Good. You got it. Right. You got it. So there's a middle, right? So love is in between these extremes, right? Just because you're like, if you're not ugly, that doesn't necessarily mean you're beautiful, right? I mean, some people are just, what do you call it? Average, I guess. Right? You got Quasimodo, poor guy, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, right? He's on that low end of the spectrum, and then for the beautiful, you got Professor Ross, and then in the people in the middle, right? Average, right? So love is in the middle, right? You were gonna say something.
What would he consider hate to be?
They don't talk about hate, do they? Maybe they should have written a dialogue about hate. That's something I joke about a lot. Everybody's like, I'm like, man, hate gets a bad name. All these people talking about love, but there's no songs about hate. People are always talking about hate speech like it's really bad. And, I'm kind of half joking. To me, I think that if you really hate something, that's a pretty strong word. Love is a pretty strong word too. I know we use it pretty loosely, but to me, if you hate something, I'm kind of with Nietzsche. I don't know if we're going to get as far this semester as I'd like. I don't know where to talk about Nietzsche, but he seems to think this way too, that hate is an important emotion, that when you hate something, it reveals something very deep about you and about what you truly desire, what you truly like, and it kind of reveals your character. And if you know and own and reflect on what you hate, that it's useful for self-actualization, self-building or whatever, self-overcoming. But now I'm getting into Nietzsche, so I better kind of bring it back over here. But yeah, so we're going to start next class with Socrates, his discussion with Diatoma. I mentioned her already. She's this priestess, holy woman that he visited when he was young. And this is where he learns about love. And he learns that love is neither ugly nor beautiful. It's in the middle. And he learns all these other things about love. And not only does he learn about what love truly is, but he learns how to be a good lover. And it's not going to be what you're thinking, right? You're probably, if you bought a book that the title was How to Be a Good Lover, and you read this stuff, you'd probably want your money back, right? Because it gets all into like how to be a good philosopher, really. So that's what we have to look forward to next class. Quite a few you got here late today, so I'll repeat what I said at the beginning. We're going to finish the symposium next time. We're going to finish the reading. You need to read up to page 60. You don't need to read past that, so you don't need to read the speech of Alcibiades. You don't need to read his entrance. You can skip all that stuff at the end. But so next on Tuesday, we're going to wrap up the symposium. On Thursday, we'll probably wrap up Plato. Whatever loose ends we need to wrap up. And if we have time, I'm hoping that at the very end of class on Thursday, so a week from today, we'll get started on Rene Descartes, the meditation. So if you don't have this textbook, get a copy of it ASAP. And the paper topics, all of them, there's a couple already posted. I'll have all of them posted by either tonight or early tomorrow. And I think the paper will be due on the 29th. I might push it back a little further, but that's probably more or less the due date. So not next week, but the week after. Okay, if you want to leave, you're free to go. That's it for today. If you want to stick around, I'll stay here for another 30 seconds, maybe a minute or so, just in case anybody has any questions. Otherwise, have a good weekend, and don't forget to do your Plato reading so we can wrap this up nice and tight.
So for the extra credit on Sunday, so you just have to show up on the thing, or?
Right, yeah. So good. Thanks for reminding me. I totally forgot this. So this Sunday, there's going to be one extra credit opportunity. You can find more information on that on Blackboard. But yeah, just show up and try to participate, and maybe do as much of that reading as you can. So you have some, you're not going to understand what we're talking about if you just show up. So you need to find a summary of the reading or do as much of it as you can. But yeah, show up and you get 5 points. Anything else? Anybody else? Do you have to still register? Yeah, you got to RSVP. Yeah, RSVP on Facebook or Meetup. It doesn't look like I have any other questions, so I'll go ahead and close it. All right, again, guys, have a good weekend. Cheers. See you around. Take care.